Morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us today for our webinar around our AMS File Transfer solution. My name is Chris Buller, and I'll be presenting the webinar today and taking you through a demo of the platform in a few minutes' time. For those of you who don't know us, we've been around since 1992, and we've always really been in what we'd call the secure information exchange space, whether it's our secure file transfer solution, or whether it's one of our NHS products, for example, with our NHS SAR portal, or whether it's with our document management and workflow solutions. And we tend to find ourselves working in a wide variety of sectors, including healthcare, the financial sector, manufacturing, for example, wholesale and logistics, legal, and the public sector. And we have all of our own support here at AMS from our offices based on the south coast in Poole. We also offer full development services. So we develop solutions to go alongside our file transfer and NHS products and our document management solutions. And being a business like us and working with secure information exchange sector, there's a lot of emphasis on security here at AMS. So as you would expect, we have ISO 27001, Cyber Essentials, for example, and the DSP Toolkit. Now, if you do work in the public sector, and perhaps you're involved in procuring a solution like this, it may be useful to know that we're also on the CCS G-Cloud framework. So when we're talking to potential customers or new customers about file transfer, quite often we get the question of why would I need a secure file transfer solution in a business like mine, and what's wrong with what we currently do? So I thought it was useful just to have this slide just to set the scene before I take you through the demo. Now we've got some traditional ways of transferring files up on the screen there. If you look at FTP, for example, or SFTP, what we tend to find, and certainly what our customers tell us, is it can be a little bit complex to set up, especially for the end recipients. There's also potential problems with not being able to monitor the file transfer protocol properly. Of course, email, we all use email every day. It's more of an environment that we live in as opposed to a solution as such. Of course, email does tend to have an element of encryption, but the main issue here is file size limitations. So maybe your Outlook is restricted to 10 meg or 20 meg, for example, and there's no real proof of receipt or delivery. Also, if you're looking to do things like recall an email after it's being sent, it's very difficult to do that. You're really relying on the third-party exchange server to say yes or no. Cloud sharing, of course, has its place. And when I say cloud sharing here, what I'm really referring to is when users end up using their own cloud sharing platform, a consumer solution to carry out their day job. Maybe they've got a WeTransfer account, for example, or maybe they've got some sort of Dropbox account, and they're sending sensitive corporate documents from their own accounts, and it's mixed in amongst their holiday photos, for example. It's very difficult from an administrator's point of view for you to have an audit trail over what's going on. And it's also difficult to ensure that you have full data sovereignty. So if you are a business where you really need UK or EU data sovereignty, if they are using consumer accounts, it's worth checking because quite often they are hosted in the States. And removable media and postal and courier, and we'll probably group these together. Now, of course, these are less common within the private sector companies that we work with, but they actually are quite common still with a lot of public sector organizations that we work with. Now, the risks, of course, are obvious. Once you remove the files and put them onto tangible media, they're, of course, subject to loss or theft. And I know they can be encrypted, but you're still losing that data. There's also a real lack of control. You can't control that data once it's on that device. And if we do refer to the postal and courier services, again, quite uncommon with our private sector customers, but quite common with some of our NHS customers, for example, some of the costs can be astronomical. Now, a very extreme example, but one of our customers was spending about 100 grand a year on posting sensitive files via couriers. So just gives you an idea of how quickly those costs can ramp up. So I will now take you through a demo of AMS File Transfer, and then I'll come back at the end and summarize a couple of the points. We just share my screen. Brilliant. So as you'll see here, we've got an AMS File Transfer demo platform. Now, it's your own branded portal. This, of course, is the AMS branding. But what we tend to do for our customers, I'd say for 99% of our customers, is we tend to brand the solution for them. Here's just a couple of quick examples here. And the reason the customers want to do this is for two reasons, really. One, of course, it looks a lot better than having the AMS branding. But two, if you're asking external users to log in and gain access to these files, it gives them a sense of reassurance. So there's a security element there as well. But we'll start off by logging in to the platform as what we call a professional user. Let's just get my password. Now I can set up two-factor authentication as well if I want. And at the moment that actually works. Sorry, bear me 1 second. That works via SMS, but we are introducing the Google Authenticator app into the platform very shortly. Okay, so here we are in the platform. Again, this is branded as AMS. This will be branded as your business if you wanted it to be. And there are two modules with the solution. There's what we call a point-to-point encrypted transfer, which we call AMS File Transfer. And there's more of a longer-term storage and collaboration module called AMS File Shares, which gives you basically almost secure boxes where you can create file structures within there and then invite people internally or externally to join those file shares and access information. But for the sake of the demo, we'll start off with file transfer. A bit like your email, most of it's self-explanatory. So of course I've got an inbox where file transfers have come back into me. I've got to send items, and I'll go through this in a lot more detail in a second because there's bits of functionality in here that are quite useful if you are sending sensitive files, and gives you an element of control after the file's actually been sent. Maybe I'm working on a huge transfer and I don't want to send it at 9 AM on a Monday, but I want to schedule it and maybe it wants to go out on at 5 PM on a Friday, for example. There's also an archive. So after a file transfer expires, and I'll explain that in a bit more detail in a second, it can go into an archive, which of course is all permissions based. And of course, I can invite external users to the platform via this button here, but also just by initiating a new transfer as well. And I'll talk through that in a bit more detail in a few seconds' time. So of course, in most cases, users will be coming in here and initiating a new file transfer. Now, what I've set up here is an address book. And this is quite a nice way of controlling the outbound transfer process for the users, because you can make these address books white lists, which mean when a user comes to send a transfer, if they haven't selected a recipient from this address book, the transfer won't actually send. So it just provides a little bit of a safety net for you, so there's no typos in email addresses, for example, and hopefully the end result is that you have less mistakes and the information doesn't end up going to the wrong recipient. But for the sake of the demo, I'm just going to send this to an end recipient called Chris Demo. A bit like an email, this could be anything that you want. So this is just a subject line. Okay. Now, if you do need to type anything that's sensitive, you don't need to worry about passwords or anything like that. The system controls all of that for you. If you do need to type anything that's deemed sensitive, you can use the secure notes section. And what this means is that the recipient has to actually authenticate to be able to read these notes. And if I click next, you should hopefully see that will turn gray. So you shouldn't be able to read it, like so. Now I can drag and drop, or I can browse to any file that I want to from here. Okay, like so. Now, you may see some limitations here on the left-hand side, but don't worry, they're purely limits that I've put on my own user account. A standard, there's no file size or file type limitations at all with this platform, but of course you can throttle it down to a user level if you want to. So one user may have the ability to send 30 meg via the platform, and another user may have the ability to send 30 gig via the platform. Completely up to you how you want that configured. If I click next, or I can click step 3. And here, if I've got permission to do so, I can also look at changing the expiry date. And again, completely up to you how you want this configured. It might be as an administrator, you want to set it up so expiry dates are set, or that there's a maximum or a minimum expiry date. If I've got permission to do so, I can change how long this file transfer lasts. So how long does the recipient have access to it? I can also choose how they authenticate as well. So, of course, I can ask them to use a login and a password, and we support the two-factor authentication for the recipients as well. Maybe I want to use a token where I send them the files and they get one email saying, here are your files, please download here. And then they get another email with a one-off unique token, which they can paste into the box to access their files. Or maybe I just want to send these files via an open link. So they get an email notification with a link which they can click on and access the files straight away. Now, working in the industry we do, obviously a lot of our customers are a little bit worried about this. So don't worry, this is completely configurable. So it might be that you don't want users to have the option, for example, to send a transfer with an open link, and maybe you want to push them down one of these other routes. I can also dictate how the information or how the file is viewed. So it doesn't change how they authenticate to access the file, but for example, if I click no restrictions, I'm happy for them to download the file. I'm happy for them to look at the file within the inline viewer. Maybe I want to force a download, for example. So some of our NHS customers do this where they enforce a download because it may be part of their job role, means that once the recipients download the file, they can tick a box and they know that they've done their job. And maybe I want to introduce digital rights management, where when the recipient receives the notification, all they can do is view the file within the inline viewer. They can't download it, they can't edit it, they can't save it, they can't delete it. All they can do is actually view the file within the inline viewer. For the sake of this transfer, we'll just click no restrictions for now. And I can also say, can you send me a notification when it's been read, or when someone's downloaded a file, for example, or when it's expired. And send the file as such. So it takes me straight to my sent items. Now, we'll go through this in a bit more detail in a second. But just to quickly reiterate that new file transfer wizard. Now, of course, I've gone through every single option there, which makes it seem a little bit long-winded, but in reality, it's quite a quick process for the user, especially when you start to throttle down the options that they have. So for example, they've typed in an email recipient, or maybe they've selected from an address book, like so. Let's just put Chris Demo back in there for now. They've written their message. They've attached their file. Okay. And if this is all preset, and you don't really have the options, it makes it a very quick process. For the sake of this demo, I'm just going to click DRM just to show you that side of the solution as well, and hit send now. So very, very quick, very intuitive. Really, solution takes very little user training. People just tend to feel familiar with it quite quickly. Now, let's log out of this for now and look at this from a recipient's point of view. So if I go to my email, And let's have a look from a recipient's point of view. Here's the email I've received as a recipient. Now, again, don't worry about this branding. This will be branded as your own business. But the recipient's now received an email, the recipient being Chris Demo in this case, and I can download the files as Chris Demo. It's taking me to AMS's portal, of course, and I can log in as Chris Demo. Let's just quickly put my password in. And here we are. Here are my files. So of course I can download them all in one hit. I can download them individually. I can view them in this inline viewer, for example, which I mentioned earlier. Now this transfer hasn't got digital rights management set up, so I can do anything I want to. Of course, I can download from here. I can print them if I want to. Whenever you see one of these inline viewers, they're actually text searchable. So if I do this, of course, it's not OCR as such. I can't actually search on images, but if the file is text-based, I can actually search through it. So it's quite handy for contracts and things like that. Now let's just go back to the file transfer. If I go back to my inbox, I should have another one. This is the one I sent with digital rights management. So if I click on this, you'll see that I can't download the file. The only thing I can do is actually view it within the inline viewer. You see, all of my options are now, they're not available. I can't print it, I can't download it. Now what we've got here is a watermark. And this is something that a lot of customers ask us for when they're using digital rights management, to be able to watermark the document. So that option is available for you as well. So let's log out of the recipient quickly and just quickly go back to the professional user, which is Chris B. Let's quickly go to the sent items. Now, the great thing about sent items with a solution like this is it gives you an element of control after the transfer has actually been sent. So I can come into this sent item, and if I'd really made a mistake, for example, I could delete that transfer altogether. Now, of course, that's caught in the audit trail, but what it means is when someone comes to access the transfer, it will no longer be available. I can also change the expiry date. Maybe someone's on holiday, for example, for a couple of weeks. I can change the expiry date. Again, all caught in the audit trail and all permissions based. I could come into files and I could say, okay, I should never have sent the cloud security overview, and I could recall specific files after they've been transferred. And likewise with shares, if I've sent this to more than one recipient, I could remove access to certain recipients after the transfer has been sent. So it just gives you an element of control and a bit of a safety net, for want of a better phrase, after you've actually sent out those files. Of course, everything is caught in this audit trail, as you would expect, and it's reasonably basic on a user level, but when you dig into the administration side of the product, the reports get quite granular and you're able to get as much information as you need. Now, something just to quickly mention is the file transfer side of the product has an Outlook plugin, and I'll quickly show you what this looks like. If I drag my Outlook across to this screen, it puts a little button in the Outlook ribbon or toolbar at the top, and I can click on this, and we just minimize this. It gives me a brand new email template to work with. But of course, it's a little bit different because it's given me some of the functionality that my branded portal would have given me as well. For example, I can pick how the recipient of this message authenticates to access those files. Again, I can change the expiry date if I've got permission to do so, and I can add secure notes as well. But the great thing about the Outlook plugin is it's really nice and simple, and it allows you to bypass the Outlook rules that may be in place. For example, if you have file size limitations on your platform, on your Outlook, sorry, and you need to send large files, this button here will allow you to do that. And that's because it's not actually attaching the file as such. It's attaching a reference stub file to the larger file that's encrypted on your platform. Likewise, I could also hit the folder attachment, and this automatically zips up the folder, encrypts it, puts it onto your own platform, and uses Outlook purely to send a notification to the recipient. From a recipient's point of view, it doesn't make a difference. Their experience will be exactly the same, whether you use the Outlook plugin or whether you use your own branded portal. So if I attach these documents quickly, you should notice that they are just little reference stub files, and I can add my subject if I want to, of course, and just send that off. Like so. Very nice and easy, very nice and intuitive. Now, from a user's point of view, that's really, and I appreciate I've skipped through that reasonably quickly, but we are reasonably short on time today. That's really it. We're trying to provide a nice, easy way for users to be able to send and receive secure files in a secure and controlled way. Or sorry, sensitive files in a secure and controlled way. Now, just to touch on file shares, and as a quick reminder, this is a more of a sort of collaboration tool where you can create secure spaces and allow internal or external users to access those with different permission levels. So if we took ABC Property Limited as an example, and we can see here I've got some folders. I can create pretty much a whole network structure within these secure spaces if I want to. I can come in here, I can say what's under the mortgage offer and get the files, for example, if I need to. Now, the great thing about this is that I can choose to invite users, whether they're internal or external, to access the whole file share if I want to. So I can click on users, hit invite, put their email address in there, and then choose how I want them to engage with that file share container. For example, do I want them to be read-only, which in this case means that they can download the files and access them, of course, read through them, or do I want them to be a publisher? So they can not only can they download the files and access them, but they can also publish files back into that file share container. Or do I want them to be an editor? So they can download the files, read through them, publish back into that file share container, but also edit and delete what you put in there as well. So again, all permissions based, don't worry. So a lot of times when we set this up for customers, they would prefer that the editor role is removed. So when their users create a file share area and they invite external users to join it, that there's only read-only or publisher. If I go back to the file share quickly and quickly touch on this, I can also come in here and I can, of course, do things like rename the folder itself. I can go to index, the index criteria, and we'll talk about that more on our data rooms webinar, because we have a whole different solution, virtual data rooms, that's based off file shares. We're able to index data and files. Of course, I can move it, I can download it in entirety, I can add a comment if I want to, like so. You see it comes up with the comment box there. But what I can do that's quite useful, I think, is I can share this folder, so nothing else. So for example, in this case, the survey, the proof of deposit, the mortgage offer won't be shared, but the personal guarantee would be shared. So I could do that by hitting share, entering the recipient's email address, and then choose how I want them to authenticate to be able to access that folder. And likewise, if we go in now and just quickly go to a file within that folder, I can share a specific file as well. Again, so the only thing they'll be able to access is that particular file, nothing else, no other file or folder within that file share container. So I can hit share it with Chris demo, for example, as recipient, and close that off. And I've just shared that specific file with Chris demo. Another thing that File Shares offers is a little bit of version control. Now, as I mentioned earlier, the other side of our business is document management related, where the version control is very, very granular and very detailed. This version control is a little bit more basic, but it definitely has its place within this file sharing environment. So if I come to this Word document here and let's check it out. And if I also go to download, and let's just open the document quickly. So I've got my document here. Sorry, let's drag that across. There we go. Now I can edit this document. Let's make that a different color as well, just so for the sake of the demo, non-bold. And if I save that and get rid of that, if I come to check that back in, I can come in here, I can actually look at the different versions of the document. Okay, we'll just let this load. It's taking its time. Here we go. So here's my edited version of the document. If I go to file versions, I can actually see the older versions as well. Again, very, very basic version control, but something that's quite useful within the context of this file sharing platform and something that customers seem to like. While that's loading, we can also look at the file comments. And there's my slightly different older version. And there's the comments. So hopefully that's given you a good overview to the file shares module as well, and different ways of using it. Now, if I just come back to my summary slide, bear with me 1 second. Okay, so thanks for your time today. I appreciate that it's been a reasonably quick demo of the AMS File Transfer platform. We will be doing other demos to talk through the administration side and the reporting side, as well as the virtual data room side as well, which is very popular with our legal customers. If you do want to get in contact, there are some contact details up on the screen now, so please feel free to drop us a line. Of course, if you do have an account manager already, please feel free to reach out. And thanks again for your time, and hopefully we'll see you on the next one.